connecting with beauty. That's the title of my talk this evening. Yeah, I think I'll start by evoking a really beautiful teaching, Buddhist teaching. It's sometimes seen as like the core teaching of the Buddha, and that is conditionality. And we've got a very beautiful wooden work of art on the side of the Great Hall, which was carved by Achara's dad. Achara's an order member in Sheffield. And it tells us a teaching of conditionality that, which I can't read and can't remember off by heart, which is really embarrassing. This being, that becomes, from the arising of this, that arises. I do not off by heart, but in that moment when you try and recall it and your mind goes blank, this not being, that does not become, from the ceasing of this, that ceases. And it's the kind of seen as like the central teaching of the Buddha conditionality. Everything arises in dependence on conditions. Every phenomena, every mental state, even Buddhahood itself arises in dependence on conditions. And so what the theme of Sanganite, we started a new series of talks, and we're looking at the Seven-Fold Puja, or the attitudes that the Seven-Fold Puja comprises, these 7 emotions. And they are the emotions of a Bodhisattva. And the Seven-Fold Puja is a practice that creates the conditions for the arising of the enlightened mind, the arising of the heart or mind of a Bodhisattva, which we call the Bodhicitta. So everything that arises in dependence on conditions, and this is a particular practice, the Seven-Fold Puja, which, if it's done repeatedly and deeply enough, will give rise to the heart and mind of a Bodhisattva, the Bodhicitta. And just to evoke what that might be like, that heart or mind might be like, I'm just going to read from a very famous text called the Bodhicayavatara, the Path of the Bodhisattva, where the author, the poet Shantideva, evokes this state of mind of the Bodhicitta. We are all the same, we all feel the same suffering and happiness. So I should look after others as I look after myself. Just as I love and cherish my body, which is divided into many limbs, so I should love and cherish this whole world, which is divided into many beings. I should dispel the suffering of others, because it is suffering like my own suffering. I should help others because they are living beings, as I am a living being. When we all want happiness and we all fear suffering, what is so special about me that I only look after myself? So this is one very beautiful verse that gives an impression of the Bodhicitta. And it's the heart or mind of a Bodhisattva where they just care so deeply about other people, and all their energies are awakened and directed towards enlightenment, but for the liberation of all beings, to remove the suffering of all beings, not just for their own liberation. And the next line is, well, what is the point of some cold liberation just for oneself alone? So this is very much at the heart of how we approach Buddhism at Sheffield Buddhist Centre and in True Atna. We're really motivated by the Bodhisattva ideal, this ideal of the Bodhisattva. And the Seven-Fold Puja is the practice of developing this heart and mind, the heart and mind of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicitta. And yeah, I also want to revisit a kind of key teaching from our week 2 of our introductory course, which is again a key concept in Buddhism, a key teaching in Buddhism, which is our actions have consequences, and our actions give rise, or in the way that everything arises on conditions. Our inner world, our states of mind depend on our ethical actions, our karmic actions. So through the law of karma, we create our own consciousness, we transform our consciousness. And by doing that, we also then transform the world that we experience, that we inhabit, and that we live in. And these 7 stages, these 7 attitudes, the ways of transforming our inner world. So we live in a state of mind, we dwell in a state of mind where we see the world very, very differently. Okay, and then last week, Vidanya introduced the series, and he introduced us to these 7 stages, and we talked about how we're going to explore the puja, but also how it's not enough just to do it every now and then in a puja. We need to cultivate these attitudes in our life every day, in our daily life. And then a question arises: well, what is the bodhicitta and where does it come from? And I'm not going to try and answer that question, but it poses a question like, is it something that comes from inside of us, or is it something that exists outside of us? And yeah, and I suppose depending on our temperament, we might, either option is okay. It's okay to kind of relate to it in either way, depending on our temperament. So for some people, the idea that wisdom and compassion arise from our depths, from within us, feels more comfortable. And that metaphor is a good metaphor, the idea that, well, the voice of wisdom is very, very subtle and quiet and gets drowned out by the busyness of life and the busyness of our mind and our hindrances. So yeah, you have the idea, well, this wisdom and compassion could come from within us. But often it's the experience of Buddhists and practitioners, now and throughout the ages, that feels more like it's something that arises from outside of our usual experience that we are aligning ourselves with. And for this reason, Shantideva, this text that I quoted from, this very famous kind of Bodhisattva text, which is where the verses of our Seven-Fold Puja come from. He uses a metaphor of inviting the bodhicitta, inviting the enlightened mind. And Vidanya talked about the puja, excuse me, last week in terms of inviting an honoured guest. It's the kind of the moods, the attitudes we'd go to if we wanted, we're getting visited, we wanted an honoured guest to visit us. And so this is very much more a metaphor of, well, we're inviting something outside of our usual experience into our experience. And Vidanya used the terms from Zen Buddhism of small mind and big mind as well, another metaphor. The idea, well, our everyday mind is a bit like this kind of small, self-concerned mind, but we need to create the conditions for big mind, which is more selfless, altruistic, wise, compassionate mind to arise within us. So we have this metaphor of inviting the honoured guest. I mean, there's other metaphors I like as well of creating the conditions for wisdom and bodhicitta, sometimes a simple metaphor like just tuning your radio. I like the idea of like we have to create the conditions to tune into wisdom and compassion, and there's too much interference in our daily mind, too much clutter. But and so we can create the conditions where we can become attuned to wisdom and compassion. I've heard also the idea of the metaphor of a lightning conductor, just setting the conditions for lightning to strike, for insight to arise, wisdom to arise, is like a lightning conductor. So there's a whole host of metaphors that you can choose the one that works best for you. But we've been using this idea of inviting an honoured guest. And when we do that, traditionally in Indian culture, I was going to say in traditional Indian culture, that's not true, just in Indian culture, when you are a guest, you really feel honoured. And that's partly why I'm wearing my Indian pilgrimage outfit this evening, because it reminds me of when we went to India as a Sangha on pilgrimage. I just felt such an honoured guest when I arrived there. We stepped off the train and people put flowers around our necks, garlands around our necks. People made a big banner saying "Welcome Sheffield Sangha," and they really wanted to make us feel welcome. We felt really revered and respected just because we were their guest. I also remember when I was traveling before I became a Buddhist, I once spent a couple of weeks, or maybe about 10 days on Tahiti, the island of Tahiti. And I just received the most amazing hospitality from a family there. Basically, me and this other guy that I'd met there were looking for somewhere to stay. We didn't have a place to stay. We didn't have enough money to afford a nice place to stay. And when they found out about this kind of random family that I'd not met before, who worked in the tourist office, said, "Well, come and stay at our house. We want to host you." And so they really looked after us. They came, they made us a bed to sleep in, cooked us this amazing meal, offered to drive us around the island to wherever we wanted to go, picked us up in the early hours of the morning after we've been to a club. It's just this incredible hospitality from these strangers that we'd not met before. And it's just so alien to our culture. We don't do that. I don't do that really. I'm not aware of people doing that in our culture, just really welcoming and inviting and revering a guest. But this is the first stage of the puja. And the puja starts with, in order to invite the enlightened mind, I make offerings to the Buddha, I make offerings to the Dharma, and to the sons and daughters of the Buddha, who are oceans of excellence. So it begins with an invitation, and then gifts, making gifts. And Shantideva he says, well, I'm a poor monk, I don't have anything to give. So in his imagination, he conjures up the most beautiful things he can imagine and gives them, offers them to the three jewels, to the Buddha, to the Dharma and the Sangha, to the enlightened mind. So he conjures up images of all the flowers in the world, all the fruits, the fragrant plants, the clear, refreshing waters, crystal mountains, and so on. Just these beautiful images and the most beautiful things he can imagine, and wants to give them, offer them imaginatively to the Buddha and Bodhisattvas. Yeah, so that's how the puja begins. It begins with beauty, with finding something so beautiful, and then wanting to give more beauty to kind of offer whatever is the most beautiful things we have to our guest. And Bidani had the metaphor last week. Well, say you're inviting someone that you really respect and revere to your house. You'll start off by wanting to beautify the place. You'll make it more beautiful. You'll put out nice vase of flowers. You'll clean up. You'll put away the rubbish, and then you'll bring gifts for them. You might be amazing gifts, or it might be, our version might be, you make them a cup of tea, you offer them a biscuit, the comfy chair to sit on. But you make the place special, and you kind of beautify the place. And it's the same with our mind. If our mind is kind of dull or ugly, that's not the conditions for wisdom or compassion to arise. We need to beautify our mind to begin with. So why do we need to do this? Why is this important? Why does the puja, and why does the kind of the conditions for the bodhicitta start with beauty? Why is beauty important? I think one of the reasons is the importance of positive emotion, and being emotionally engaged with our Dharma life and with the puja as well. So, as I said earlier, we live in our inner world much more than we do in the world out there. And one of the phrases we use is beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's our inner world that sees beauty. It's our state of mind. We're going to dwell in our inner world, and we need to beautify our inner world. Beauty is uplifting. It lifts our state of mind, our state of consciousness. And it connects us with all kinds of positive emotion, gratitude. When I see something beautiful, whether it's in nature or a work of art, I just feel really delighted and uplifted and full of joy, full of gratitude. And also when I experience beauty or encounter beauty, I become very content. It kind of stills my inner world down. I become content, and it breeds simplicity and contentment. And I was thinking back to the start of the first lockdown, and everything slowed down. Life became much, much more simple for a lot of people. And there wasn't a lot of input, there wasn't very much you could do. And what I remember was just how alive the world seemed, how alive the birds and the wildlife seemed, how beautiful the birdsong was, and seeing all the birds. And it's like I'd never really seen them properly before, but no, in that situation, they really seemed so beautiful and very vividly beautiful. And then the trees seemed amazingly beautiful, and being able to go for a walk where I live. And I was so grateful for where I lived, in the trees and the parks. And people seemed beautiful. Usually I kind of didn't take that much notice of people as I was passing them, but just to be able to see another person, I was so grateful and so happy. So yeah, beauty and being at the state of mind where you're open to beauty, it just makes lots of positive emotion flow and available. So that's one reason why beauty is important. Another reason why it's important is to do with receptivity. If we're wanting to create the conditions for the enlightened mind or for wisdom, we need to be in a receptive state. And beauty makes that much, much more possible. There's something to do with the connection between beauty and truth, beauty and reality. That was so I evoked the start of the first lockdown, but 18 months later, after a few lockdowns and a few school closures and not being able to go on retreat, I was much less in touch with beauty, unfortunately. A few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, I just felt really cut off from the enlightened mind, the bodhicitta, truth, reality, big mind, wisdom, all those different metaphors. I just felt really cut off from it. It was very painful. And it just seemed like, my world is much more narrow, materialistic, nihilistic, kind of closed off to anything higher, and just unaware, much less aware of beauty. And just the idea of the enlightened mind just makes much less sense. The idea of inviting the enlightened mind just makes much less sense in that kind of state of mind. But then if I'm in touch with beauty, which I am again now, and dwelling on this talk has been really lovely to help with that. But if your heart and mind is full of beauty and in contact with beauty and full of positive emotion, then we're much closer to the way things are. We're much closer to reality. It's like the veil that separates us from the truth is much thinner in that state. We're kind of closer to an experience of awe and wonder and mystery when we're alive to beauty. So it's much more likely that we're going to be in touch with wisdom. That's why beauty is so important and why it starts with beauty. We're kind of beautifying our inner world and our mind, but also we're aligning ourselves with being more receptive, open to the truth. And there's even a path in the Pali Canon called the liberation, called the beautiful. That was the theme of one of our retreats recently. And the Buddha talked about beauty itself being a gateway into enlightenment. So the beauty itself is a path, can be a path that leads us to more and more beautiful states, all the way to liberation. So beauty is really, really important. So then the next kind of question that arises, well, how do we cultivate this? How do we connect more with beauty? And firstly, I'll talk about that in the puja. So, and then in our daily life. So in the puja, a slogan came up to me today, which seemed like a good slogan. It might not now, but we'll see it. But basically in the puja, don't go through the motions, go through the emotions. That seemed really good this morning. So don't go through the motions, which is something I can often do. You kind of chant the verses, you say the verses, but just going through the motions. And then nothing's really happening. And what you want to be doing is going through emotions, 7 different emotional stages. So ideally, you need to really engage your emotions in the puja, engage your imagination, engage the senses. So in the first section, both in the version that we chant a lot in Sheffield and in the puja book, there's loads of imagery, and you can really engage. And it's best to, if you can, engage with that imagery and that use all your senses in your imagination. So, for example, I offer all the flowers in the world, or try and picture that, try and see beautiful flowers that you see beautiful. Try and smell them, even imagine the scent of the flowers that you find beautiful. Incense, perfume, that gets described, the fruits, fragrant plants, so the fragrance of the plants. Try and engage imaginatively with these. Don't just go through the motions and say the words, bring your imagination into it, and then it will connect you emotionally. You need to start off by being connected emotionally with the puja, and then the rest of the puja can flow from that. So to begin with, what we're doing is bringing to mind and revering what's most important to us. So what is most important to you? What do you find most beautiful? Bring that to mind, and that will engage you emotionally. That will raise your state of mind. And then imagine offering what you find most beautiful. So what it might be, it might be some of the things we recite in the puja, but it might be other things. What is it that you find most beautiful? What could you imagine giving to whatever it is that's most valuable to you, whether it's the enlightened mind, whether it's something else? Yeah, because for me, when I do that, when my emotions are engaged and I'm engaged with what's most beautiful to me, the rest of it flows out of that. Then I want to bow to it. I want to salute it. I want to commit myself to it. I want to go for refuge to it. I want to confess. I want to transform myself. Get everything out of the way that's blocking the way. I want, so the rest of the puja, the rest of the emotions flow out of that. It's really important to become emotionally engaged. Get your emotions engaged to start with, and that's the fuel that propels you through the rest of the puja and through the Dharma life. So I'll move on to talk about, in our day-to-day life, how do we connect more with beauty? And in a way, there's a lot there's a lot of things that we use this term input. There's a lot of input in that can clutter our mind and almost pollute our mind. So just be aware of what you're taking in through the senses. What are you taking in through the senses, and what effect does it have on you? In particular, phones, screens. But it might be news as well. What are you taking in through the senses, and what effect is it having on your state of mind? And is it dulling it? What effect does it have? And my experience is the more I'm engaging with screens and the more busy and complicated my life is, the less I feel in touch with my values and with meaning and with beauty, the more I feel closed off from that. So there's a phrase from when I was at school which was stop, look and listen. That was the Green Cross code for crossing the road safely. But it's also a good recipe for just being receptive to beauty. Just stop whatever you're doing from time to time. Just look around and listen. Just take in whatever's around. And you probably, you don't have to do much more than that to find beauty. It's just, life is beautiful and the world is beautiful. Nature is beautiful. Urban areas can be beautiful. Just if you're in that state of mind where you're just being open to it and stop and look and listen. Also, so I find that helps. Just really looking at stuff, being aware of things. But then also for me, the ethical life is very, very beautiful. And we have in the Seven-Fold Puja, we offer candles, we offer incense to the Buddha, and at the shrine we chant a mantra, we make offerings. And it's said that incense is a metaphor for the ethical life. It's a beautiful fragrance, the perfume that gets created by skillful action. It perfumes the world. It creates this beautiful perfume. So I find ethical behavior, skillful behavior, really, really beautiful. Kindness, generosity. If I see acts of kindness around me, generosity, I find that really moving, very, very beautiful. Especially the positive precepts. So love, kindness, integrity. Someone who's really has integrity, I find that very, very beautiful. So the more we practice the precepts, we're beautifying our mind, our inner world, if we're cultivating love, generosity, truth, awareness, simplicity, it's beautifying our mind, and that's creating more and more, it's aligning ourselves with the bodhicitta. If we're, through the precepts, we're becoming less selfish and more selfless. And that is that's kind of thinning the veil between us and enlightenment, the more selfless we become. Another thing you can do is just visit awe-inspiring places that move you, take you out of that kind of small mind and into more that big mind. It might be natural beauty at the Peak District, parks, galleries, art galleries, cathedrals. Just find, it might be music, pieces of music, but find what conditions create that sense of awe and mystery, wonder for you. Okay, so that's another thing you can do. And then it's becoming a bit of a list, an informal list. So another thing you can do is we need to counteract our British, this is me speaking to myself, a British reservedness, a stilted emotion and almost like, blocked positive emotion and, an unwillingness to express positive emotion and beauty. So we need to counteract that. So we need to be, this is to me speaking to myself, be more expressive, be more beautiful. And don't be afraid of that. So that's one reason, again, why I'm wearing my kind of Indian outfit, to remind me of that, remind me of Indian culture, and people are so warm and expressive and beautiful. And I really want to rejoice in Sarah and Shantichara, who make these really fantastic shrines, these wonderful, beautiful shrines, and the stunning flowers behind, they're always beautiful. And they put a lot of work as well into beautifying the centre, to cleaning the centre, looking after the centre, making the centre beautiful. Soy Mati on Zoom and the gardening team who make the gardens really beautiful. So, loads of people put that effort into making this place beautiful. So what I'm saying is counteract that reservedness and make a beautiful shrine where you live. Think of what you love and what's beautiful to you, then make a really beautiful shrine that gives expression to that. And then make offerings to it. Try it out. It might sound weird, but try it out, see what happens. That's another thing. And then a really important thing to do is to just reflect on what it is that you find beautiful. What moves you? What do you find beautiful? And a lot of people recently have been telling me that they find this Sangha beautiful, that they find that the most precious, the most valuable thing to them is this spiritual community, that they find this really valuable, really precious to them. And I can see that, sometimes we lose sight of that working at the centre, but just the world can seem bleak sometimes, but just to have a community of positive people who really care for each other, who are really trying to bring the best out of each other to develop. And, and at its highest, we're a community devoted to the Bodhisattva Ideal, to creating the conditions for the arising of the bodhicitta. That is such a precious thing, such a valuable, beautiful thing. We are a beautiful community aspiring to a really beautiful ideal. So it might be the Sangha that's most valuable, most precious to you. It might be something else. But if you do feel like the Sangha is really important, well, then think, well, what, the thing that flows out of in the puja is offerings and gifts. Like, what could you offer? What could you offer to the Sangha? What do you already offer and give to the Sangha? So it's such a valuable place, and the more people put energy into it, the more we can do, the more we can make happen. So I know Sarah at the moment is looking for more people to help her with the shrines, with cleaning the centre. The gardeners, I'm sure, will be welcome of more pairs of hands and gloves and spades. What could you do? What could you give? What can you offer to the Sangha to help to make it even more beautiful and to help you feel emotionally connected, more and more emotionally connected with it? And money, of course, is really, really helpful. If you can take out a standing order, increase your standing order, we can use that to make the centre more beautiful. We just built the Remembrance Gardens, created those out the back. We could do more with more resources. That's okay. So if you find the Sangha beautiful, what could you offer? What could you give? And then I've just been reflecting on what do I find beautiful, and then what response do I have, the response of wanting to offer, wanting to give. And I've been thinking about the Remembrance Garden, and the three people whose ashes and remains we have at the moment in the Remembrance Garden. We have Dharmapalita, Susiddhi and Dada Rinpoche. And we opened the Remembrance Garden, beautiful garden recently, and we put their ashes in there in a very beautiful ritual. But for me, what I find really beautiful is the values embodied in a person, in a real person. So just thinking back to my friend Dharmapalita, who passed away a few years ago, and he had very little in terms of energy to give. Whatever he had, he gave it to the Sangha. He would just week after week teach meditation. He had very poor health for a very long time, but just unfailingly, without complaining, just turn up, and sometimes with like a tube pumping drugs into his heart, he would lead the meditation and wrap up this machine that would keep him alive in a blanket, and he just turn up and give whatever he had to the Sangha. And he loved doing that. I remember him kind of, when he was dying, saying, what a great thing it is that we do, what a great thing that we do. And then Susiddhi, the first chair of the centre, who, for him, this was the most valuable thing, to create a community. So he gave his life to that. And lots of people, other people I could name, have done that. He went to work as a pharmacist, sold his car, got buses to work, and used all the money he earned to pay for a community which became this centre, to support people, to teach at it. So just these, like, when I think about their lives, which I can do now, I've got the Remembrance Garden, I can walk about it, bring them to mind. I get a sense of lineage. I get a sense of, just a beautiful lineage. These people who found this so valuable and moving, and they've been moved to ultimately give themselves, to serve it and give themselves to it. So I find that really, really beautiful. And then Dada Rinpoche, who is Sangharakshita regarded as a living bodhisattva. So we've been talking about people with that mind, that enlightened mind, and he regarded one of his teacher and friend Dada Rinpoche as being a bodhisattva. And he chose his words always very carefully, Sangharakshita. So for him to say that is really significant. And we have his remains here in Sheffield, which is really significant. And I'm kind of only still absorbing that, really, what that means and the significance of that. So for me, just to end, the most beautiful thing for me is the Bodhisattva Ideal. That is the thing that I've always, since I encountered it, found just the most beautiful ideal possible for human beings. The idea that we could work on ourselves and cultivate this state of being where we care more about other people than they care for themselves. I can't put it into words adequately, but I'll read some more of Shantideva. I think he does the best job of putting it into words. Can't find the bit I was going to read. Maybe I'll read that same bit again from earlier. We're all the same. We all feel the same suffering and happiness. So I should look after others as I look after myself. Just as I love and cherish my body, which is divided into many limbs, so I should love and cherish this whole world, which is divided into many beings. Yeah, I'll pause there because I've got more to say. Not too much more. When I first encountered this, I think it will have been at Sangha night, because we talk about the Bodhisattva Ideal a lot at Sangha night because it's so important and beautiful. And then I remember falling in love with it, but also remember going to Padmaloka on a retreat that Vedanya was leading on the Bodhicharyavatara, and just studying the text, studying the verses. I kind of knew then, this is what I want to do with my life. This is what life is for, and this is what, is this a response, or this is so beautiful, and I want to give, I want to offer to it, in a way, I want to give myself to it, which is, what I'm still trying to do, still aspiring to do. Yeah. So the bodhicitta, it isn't something just we have to admire from afar. It's not something that we can revere and find beautiful from a distance. It's actually something that we're trying to, through the practice of puja, we're inviting that heart and that mind into our own experience. We're creating the conditions for that to arise within us. So through the practice of puja, we're inviting that. Through living an ethical, skillful life, a beautiful life, we're aligning ourselves and transforming our consciousness. We're aligning ourselves with the enlightened mind, with reality. And through living out these 7 different attitudes of the puja in our life, the attitudes of a bodhisattva, we're creating the conditions for this to arise within us, even to take possession of us. This is the language Shantideva uses. So what I'd summarize by saying, find something beautiful that you want to live for and that you want to serve. It doesn't matter what it is, really. I mean, I think it'd be great if you thought that was a bodhicitta and the 3 jewels, but it might be something else. But just, life is short, so find something that you really find beautiful and you want to live for, that brings meaning to your life, and then serve that. And by connecting imaginatively and emotionally with the puja and with these attitudes and with what we find most beautiful, that propels us through the Dharma life and through the rest of these attitudes and emotions that we'll hear about in the coming weeks. And we keep doing that until eventually we begin to manifest this heart and this mind within ourselves, whether it's coming from within us or from outside of us. Begin to manifest the bodhicitta, and we can give expression to that in the world. We can give expression to the bodhicitta, to this heart and mind of the bodhisattva. And that's what Sangharakshita said had happened with his teacher, Dada Rinpoche. So I'll just end with again, just quoting Shantideva once more. This state of mind in which we care more for others than they care for themselves is a miraculous jewel, and its arising is a wonder. It is the source of the world's joy and the cure for the world's suffering. There is no way we can fathom the depths of its goodness. I bow down to those in whom this precious jewel of the mind has arisen. I go for refuge to those sources of joy who bring happiness even to those who harm them.